Are you ready to invest in real estate or to purchase a home, but you're not entirely sure what kind? You're not sure if you should go for the traditional single-family home where your tenant can have their own space, or if you should get a multifamily dwelling that's going to help you increase that cash flow over time while your tenants can help you pay off the mortgage. If you're not sure and you're looking to find out what's the best way to go about this, you have arrived to the perfect episode because we're going to cover that today. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode at Nova Rice Invest. If this is your first time tuning into this channel, well, let me tell you that this is your channel for real estate education. So pros and cons, what's better for you? Should I invest in a single family home or should I buy a multi-unit? And for that, we're going to jump straight into my iPad. All right, so before we dive into the details as to what's better or which one it's more convenient for you, let's just level the playing field and try to define what they're about for those who are tuning into the channel for the first time. So you have the traditional single family homes, and that's what most people know as single family home. And that's in essence a property where only one family can reside, right? Now, for multifamily, we're talking about property where you have more than, right? So more than is the key, more than one family. So examples could that be, let's say, for example, a duplex where you can place two families in there, triplex, quadplex, or an actual building where you have lots and lots of apartments in there. So anything from 2 and above will make up a multifamily. So now that we've gotten that straight out, so what we need to do now is just to do a comparison. But the first comparison we're going to do, it's on the financial side. So you have single family homes and you have multi-units, right? Or multifamily. And we're going to talk about finances because, you know, that's usually where we face the most struggles when we're trying to get in. So let's see. You have a single family home. What's one of the good things or some of the bad things that you can expect with a single family? So one of the greatest things with a single family is that you have a low entry barrier because typically you can get away with just putting somewhere between 5 to 20% as down payment, correct? But meanwhile, with a multifamily, the impression that you get out of multifamilies is that it is typically for commercial use, right? So you have multiple families you want to place together, and therefore the lenders want to see more skin in the game. And for that, they have a higher entry barrier, and that it's at least, so higher entry barrier. And they typically require you to put down at least 25% down. Now, there's a caveat to this one, and that is if you were to reside in that multifamily. So if you were to say invest in a multifamily up to 4 families, you can actually reside in one of the units and rent out the other 3. If it's a duplex, then you can live in one side and then reside on the other half. So if you were to invest in a multifamily that it's 4 families or less, then you can get away with having a low entry. So you can get away with paying, let's say, a 10% down if you can prove that you're going to reside there or that you're going to use that property as your primary residence. Other than that, anything where you don't reside in there or anything that is 5 families or above, you're going to have a higher entry barrier, somewhere between 25 or above, right? Now, another benefit is that, let's say, for example, in a single family home, you have a higher chance of appreciation. Why? Because you have multiple exit strategies. So you can sell a single family home to a homeowner. And just like I've shown you multiple times in this channel, homeowners typically tend to buy with emotions. It's the house that you want, the dream home that I've always wanted, right? So they don't mind going above and beyond and getting that dream home that they want. But at the same time, you can also sell this to investors who specialize in just buying single family homes and rent it out. If you were to compare this to multifamily, then in terms of appreciation, you actually have less appreciation here and multifamilies. Why? Because the tendency is that usually multifamilies are for rentals. They're not for homeowners, for someone who typically wants to reside there. And the impression is that if this home is rented, then people typically don't take care of it, and or at least that's the belief. I'm not saying that that's the real case, but that's the perceived idea that most people get. And when you have your home, when you own your primary home, you typically will want to take great care of it, right? So you want to make sure it looks pretty, you want to add a fresh paint of coat, you want to fix up the kitchen so it looks nice. Same thing for the grass. So it typically has a better curved appeal. And because of that, the appreciation goes up more on the single family as opposed to a multifamily. And therefore, your exit strategies are limited because typically the ones who tend to want to buy multifamilies are investors. And as you know, investors love to buy low, and therefore they're not going to pay an extra single dime for something that is not worth it unless it's an inexperienced investor. Now, moving along, going through that list. So we also have income, right? So on a single family, you are highly dependent on only one source of income versus in a multifamily, you have multiple sources of income. So let's say, for example, if you buy a 4-family dwelling, you, let's say, experience a vacancy in one of them, you still have the other 3. Or if you were to reside on there, you still have the other 2 units that are being rented. And then part of that income, it's going to help you cover the mortgage and then whatever you put from your own pocket, of course, since you're residing there. So these are definitely some of the factors that you need to consider. As you can see, no one is better than the other. It's more about what's best for you in this case. So going through that list, I would like to add one more, and that is in terms of growth. So with a single family home, the growth is lower, right? Because you're growing your portfolio one house at a time. And in comparison to multi-unit, your growth is faster because with one dwelling, you'll have 4 apartments, or one dwelling, you'll have 3, or if you're buying a building, all you gotta do is just to make one purchase and then you'll get multiple apartments in it, which in essence, it is something very important to consider because of the amount of mortgages. Why am I bringing this up? As an individual, you can have up to 10 mortgages max. So when you are trying to, let's say, expand in real estate, you definitely need to consider this because in a single family home, you can buy one house at a time, right? So that means that by the time you buy 4 single family homes, you have already used up 4 of your mortgages. So that means you have 6 left. But the more mortgages you add to your credit, the more difficult it gets to get approved going forward, right? But when you're investing in a multifamily, let's say you can buy a 4-family dwelling, all you need is just to use one mortgage of your mortgage card. So if you buy one single dwelling that has 4 units in it, you are only using 1 out of the 10 mortgages, which means you still have 9 mortgages left in the equation for you to use. Versus on the single family side, if you buy 4 different houses, you already used up 4, which means you only have 6 mortgages left in the equation. So definitely something very important to consider. So that's on the financial side. So what we're gonna do now is to talk about the management of it, because obviously there's something very important when it comes to the management of your property, because you need to see if you're actually cut out for it or if you have the stomach for it. And while I try to get this live ready, don't forget to hit the like button right here if you're enjoying the content so far, to help this episode rank and help other people like you who are looking to get information of this kind as well. So now we're going to talk about the management. So this first item that I want to add here in terms of management, it falls in between. It has to do with management, but at the same time, it's finance related. And that has to do with the value of the house. So the value of the house, it's based on the comparables. So any houses around the area that meet the same criteria. Let's say they are just as nicely fixed as yours and as well as taken care as yours. Those houses, the historical prices of how much they have been sold, it's what's going to determine how much your property is worth. So everything is based on a comparable, which in a way it sort of takes away from your control of creating value, right? On a multi-unit, the value of your property is based on the rent that it generates. So that has to do more with the market. Let's say you want to fix it up and get one of the units a little bit nicer than what's in the area, so then you can demand a little bit more rent. And maybe you decide to cut down some of the expenses in terms of management. So that means that in the end, you're going to wind up with more gains or more cash flows in the end. So your property value is going to be based on that. We talked about expansion once again. The expansion is definitely lower here, but for someone, let's say for example, who's looking to expand a little bit slowly because you don't mind handling one property at a time, get some lessons learned from it, then this is the perfect investment for you. But if you're looking to grow very fast, then you should definitely go on the multi-unit side, because you get to do everything by the bulk and then you can do this faster. Now, in terms of tenants, right? There's a perceived belief that when you have a single family home, you get better quality tenants. Why? Because these are people who can afford more, and usually is the equivalent of higher education. The higher education you have, the more privacy you're gonna need, the more you can actually afford versus a multi-unit. As you know, an apartment is usually more affordable than renting out a house, unless you're renting in a luxurious area. But for the most part, an apartment, talking about the same areas, right? An apartment in the same area in comparison to a house will always be much more affordable than an actual single family home. So tenant quality, there's a perception that they're higher quality. And over here, talking about multi-units, the perception is that we'll have lower quality tenants. And by lower quality tenants, I'm not saying that you're going to get the kind of families or the kind of people who are going to destroy your home and stuff like that. It just simply means that your qualification process is going to take a little bit longer, because maybe the demographics in the area need to check out more items. Let's say credit is not enough. Maybe you need to check out their income sources, or maybe you need more referrals from them. And that's in essence what lower quality tenants mean. And lastly, you have higher demands, right? And what do I say higher demands? Most people, unless you live in big cities, big metropolitan areas, people will always prefer to have their own home. Why? Because it's nice to have your own home office, or it's nice to have a yard where your children can run around. And once again, it's also higher in demand because of the exit strategies that you have. You can actually sell the homes in the end to home buyers, or you can sell those out to real estate investors as well. So there's always going to be a higher demand for a single family home versus a multi-unit. Only those who are cut out to invest are those who are going to be looking for multi-units. So we have less demand in here. So once again, here is a long list. So we have, in terms of finances, low entry barrier. This is something that you should definitely consider. Do you have what it takes in terms of finances to acquire a single family home? Do you even have enough to do a multifamily? But if you want to go to a multifamily, then you need to ask yourself, okay, what's my long-term goal? Do I care more about appreciation, or do I just want to make sure that my units are rented and I want to build a buffer for myself, and where if I do have a vacancy, I don't have to worry about coming up with the money from my own pocket. So each and one of them is different. Here is the list for you to definitely take a look at them. If you were to ask me, in my personal opinion, I actually have a little bit of both. I have a mixture of multi-units and single families, because I do understand that single families will always be in demand, but I also don't want to rely solely on a single family home, one source of income, and then maybe when I go through a difficult situation like this example in the pandemic, then I don't want to be sort of like struggling trying to figure it out, where am I going to come up, or where do I have to go in order to have enough income to cover my mortgage obligations. And in terms of multifamilies, then you need to ask yourself as well, am I cut out for something like this? Can I handle more volume? Can I handle more people? Am I okay with getting less appreciation as long as I get more income today? So definitely something to consider. I hope that you found this episode very valuable, and while I still have you here, do not forget to check this episode right here. That's going to help you complement everything you learned just today. And until then, I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Bye-bye.